Yeah, so I think there's general principles to follow, spend a third on living, spend a third on rent, and then put a third away, right? Those are pretty strong principles to follow, regardless of what income you're on. The reason I have a job is because we're not taught this in school.
Yeah.
We're all taught how to find the best career for us and find something you love and the money will follow. And it does typically, but no one ever comes in and says, well, when money follows, where do I put it?
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Envisionaire podcast with Nicole Nguyen. This is a podcast where we explore everyday topics, share our experiences, and help turn life's challenges into life's opportunities. Let's get ready to envision living our best lives. On today's episode, we have Alexis Liatis, who will be speaking with us about financial planning for all ages and all incomes. Alexis is a partner at Morrinson Wealth Management, one of the largest practices of St. James Place, where he has over 100 clients. He helps develop financial strategies and solutions for his clients as they plan their financial futures. Alexis has worked in the banking and investment industry for over 7 years, analyzing and advising on financial performance and investment strategies. I have known Alexis for a couple of years now in both a capacity of my own financial advisor as well as my friend. So I'm very happy that he's agreed to come on the Envisionaire podcast to speak to us about financial planning, particularly in this financially turbulent time. I'm hoping he will help all of us turn any financial challenges we face into financial opportunities. So welcome, Alexis. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks, Nicole. What a lovely intro.
So I've touched a bit on your financial background already, but I'd like to ask you to share a bit about your background so the listeners can understand who you are and how you ended up in the financial world.
Sure. So, I wasn't one of those kids who knew exactly what they wanted to do when they were young. I enjoyed school and the different, there were some subjects I preferred better than others, but I didn't really have a clear goal. My dad worked in finance for a long time in investment banking. And so I took from him a little bit and I went to university. I went to McGill in Canada and I studied finance, which was a very broad-based introduction into the financial world. And I still didn't really know what I wanted to do. So what they tried to do is kind of put you into one of three buckets, either investment banking, asset management, or consulting. These were the kind of the three main routes that the students would then go on to. And, investment banking, my dad told me some stories about the long hours, not very much recognition. You really had to stick at it, high employee churn rate, what have you. It isn't what it used to be, these kind of things. So I was kind of put off by that. Asset management was very interesting because I enjoy the technical side of, portfolio construction, management, economic indicators, and staying abreast of what's happening in the world to develop longer term returns. But I didn't want to be stuck behind a model for 14 hours a day because I really enjoyed working with people. And, I finished my university degree. I went back to the UK and I was pulling pints at the local bar just to kind of do something throughout the day. So I wasn't just sending out CVs.
Yeah.
And, this guy came up and said, can I have this beer? And I recognized an American accent. I struck up a conversation. I said, oh, what do you do? And he said, well, I work in tax. And I said, oh, well, I don't really want to be an accountant. So he said, well, no, I work in wealth management. I was like, well, what's that? And he started explaining to me what this industry entailed. And, I suddenly thought, oh my God, this is exactly what I love. This blend, technical aspect, the portfolio construction, developing solutions with face-to-face client interaction. I started in his firm as a paraplanner, which think paralegal, but for financial planners, we build the solutions, build the reports, and write up all the technical details, which I then hand over to the advisor. I actually like the client interaction as well. So I progressed on to become a financial advisor, and I've been with St. James's Place now for just over 3 years. It's been a fantastic experience, just given the breadth of clients that I've been fortunate enough to deal with, the different solutions, and the amount of resources at St. James's Place's disposal.
And you're a partner. You recently became a partner in the last year, right? So
I did.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, more responsibility for sure.
And expertise, of course.
Of course.
Yeah. Well, I think the topic of financial planning is such an important topic for us to fully understand and actually learn as much as we can. I myself have tried to improve my financial literacy since the pandemic hit, and I'm shocked that I have not done enough in my early 20s and late 20s and even early 30s to take advantage of all the information and opportunities that are so readily available, but also speaking to experts like yourself who have this wealth of knowledge. So very grateful that you are on, and hopefully we can break down these topics into easy to understand bits and hopefully delve in. So the first question I have, and I think most listeners probably are thinking is, well, I'm wary to do anything with my money during an economic recession or any sort of turbulent financial times. So what would you advise to anyone during this time?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and it's one that I get asked quite a bit in terms of, well, things don't look great right now. Alexis, is now a good time to be investing? Or rather, I have been invested and my assets are going down. What should I do with my surplus cash? Should I wait? All these different questions. The first thing that is important to understand when assessing the size of an investment, the regularity of it, all that stuff is, what is it for? People tend to not think about the end goal and just think, okay, well, I'll just start putting it into this, that, and the other and just hope for the best outcome. It's paramount to start from the end. So, okay, well, let's look at pensions, for example. Would you keep your pension in cash now just because markets aren't doing great? Well, you would look at your investment horizon. If you're 60 today and you need to access the capital immediately, then there's an argument to hold perhaps a high level of cash, or at least hold a high level of less risky assets. So you're preserving your capital, and hopefully you've done enough work that you can afford to do that. So you don't need to be chasing big returns. But if you're younger, if you have 5, 10, 15 plus years to invest, you need to kind of shift your perspective a bit. Firstly, the general mindset is, when markets go down, I'm going to sell because this doesn't make me feel very comfortable. I don't really like it. It's keeping me up at night. I don't want to lose more, so I'm going to sell and hold cash. And the opposite side, when markets are doing well, on a bull run, I'm going to keep buying in because this looks great. It would be helpful to take a reverse mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So when markets go down, you need to view that as an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Because these are good quality companies, at least the ones that we invest in.
Yeah.
They're not going anywhere. They're just having a difficult time because of inflationary pressures. And everything's on sale.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what I'm telling clients is, even if it takes another year, another 2 years, if you have the time to write it out, that's why I started with your time horizon.
Yes.
If you have 5 plus, 10 plus years to write this out, this is the best buying opportunity you're going to get in the next 10 years, from my perspective. And then, when markets are high, people say, well, buy in. So, well, be careful, because what happens when markets go up? What must go up must come down. People buy in at a very high price when things are at a premium, and then markets drop and they sell. So it's the worst thing you can do.
Right.
So, but by no means am I suggesting people try and time the market, because that's the other thing that catches people out. I'm going to wait a bit more because markets will keep going down. But what if you wait long enough that you miss the recovery? So the most important thing, it's not timing the market, it's time in the market.
Oh, that's a good line. So don't time the market, spend time in the market.
Exactly right.
Nice. Okay. I like that.
Yeah. So really, to answer the question, in uncertain economic times, you want to try and view this as an opportunity. It's difficult because you're emotionally attached to your money. You don't want to lose money. But that's why, if you, before even considering investing, set yourself a goal and say, well, I don't need access to this capital for another 10 years. That shouldn't really phase you, right? What people do is they obsess over it. They look at it day in, day out. You're going to give yourself a heart attack if you do that, because that's what markets do. They go up and down every day.
Yes. So I just want to touch on something. I know you mentioned that you have to look at the investment horizon from the beginning.
Yeah.
The advice it's really pertinent, especially for younger people who maybe have 10 years, let's say, to play in the market. What if someone is older? Would the advice change?
So again, it's difficult to give broad-based advice without knowing the individual. That's why I sit down with all my clients individually and look at, what have you got in place now? And what are your retirement objectives? So if you're older, most likely you're planning for retirement. The word retirement is misleading because it means something different to everyone. I've met people who say, well, retirement for me is working 2 days a week and spending $3,000 a month. From age 65. I've had other people say, I want to retire at 55. I don't want to work another day in my life and I want to spend $20,000 a month. Thanks very much. That's what retirement means to them.
Yeah.
So if you're older, you firstly need to look at take stock of what you have, how it's invested. Understand that there are two broad phases to investment. The way I see it is you have your accumulation phase, your pure accumulation phase, what I call it, which is where you don't need access to your capital. You're generating an income from work, property, what have you, to sustain your living. Yeah. And you can just leave that money to grow. And then you get into the decumulation phase, which is another word for what I call managed drawdown. And the reason I call it managed drawdown is because when you get to that stage where you want to access the money, the last thing you want to do is take it out of the market because inflation is still here. Your latte is going up by historically 2.5% to 3% a year right now. But I'd be willing to bet that you won't be getting that on your cash account.
I was going to say I should be investing in Starbucks then.
Well, it's a good company.
Yeah.
A well-diversified portfolio, sure.
Yeah. Right, go on. Yeah.
So take stock of what you have. Understand what retirement means to you or whatever capital event you're planning for. And then another thing that's useful to look at is how much risk do I need to take? Because sometimes people in their 50s who say, I want you guys to shoot the lights out with performance. I want you to beat every benchmark and get 15 to 20% every year. And then I show them a projection and I say, well, given what you have in place, what you want to achieve, you don't need to take that risk. You'll be fine at 5-6% a year. So then that opens the conversation to, okay, well then what kind of securities can I invest in to get me that lower return? Broadly, the older you get, the less risky you should become, especially if you're wanting to generate an income from your portfolio. So it'd be risky to have it all in equities and stock when you're drawing down from it, because as I mentioned, equity markets go up and down every day. If you're trying to get a consistent income out of it, it could be problematic.
Right.
So having a broadly diversified portfolio across equities, fixed income, property, alternative assets to provide a stable income for you is what I would look at for someone approaching their decumulation phase.
Yeah. I wanted to follow up on the accumulation phase. Sure. So let's say you have someone who hasn't done what they should have in the accumulation phase of their life. What would you recommend? What advice would you give if they don't have that savings, or they haven't really been doing what they could have been doing in their accumulation phase? So let's say that they still will have, some income that they might be able to do something with, but they just haven't actually accumulated as much as they should have, let's say over the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Sure. I do see that most of the time, if I'm being honest. I'll meet people in their, 40s, 50s who are on 200, 300, 400K a year. And they say, well, I've pretty much been on that since I'm early 30s or what have you. And I do a bit quick back of the envelope. And then I look at what they have in savings and I look at what their expenses are and I say, where's the money?
Yeah.
Right. Yes. And it's a very touchy subject. All of this is very touchy because, it's very taboo. You don't talk about money. It's, but it's helpful to do so with a third party because it's better to rip the Band-Aid off now than when you're 60, 65.
Yeah.
And people always underestimate their expenses. They say, oh, I only spend $2,500 a month all in. And then I say, okay, well, you and your spouse are netting $10,000 a month. Your ongoing expenses are what you've told me 3-4 a month, but you're only saving £500 a month. Where's it going? It's like, oh yeah, actually, these things come up. It's a bit, there's sometimes perhaps an element of shame or what have you, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I have those conversations a lot. And this is why whatever stage you're in inside the accumulation phase, I'll sit down with my clients and we build a report from day dot, from today. So, okay, well, shoulda, woulda, coulda in the past. We can't change that. Yeah. You have the capacity to save now. The main assets on your side is capacity to save and time. And then we project it out and we say, okay, well, this is what it looks like. And sometimes I do have to have conversations where I say, well, you're 45 now, you have 50K in the bank, you have 50K in your pension, and you want to retire at 55. 60 and you want to spend 5K a month, it's just not going to happen.
Right.
So sometimes there's an element of that's not very realistic.
Yeah.
So then there's other factors we can change. You either work longer or you reduce spending. It's not necessarily a case of, okay, well, you're far behind, so let's try and go really, really risky to get the most return, because that could turn out very badly.
Yeah.
Right. So sometimes if you haven't done as much as you could have, everyone's in that boat, by the way. Everyone could have done more.
Yeah, of course.
Right. But if it's to the extent where, you haven't done that and you have unrealistic retirement expectations, well, then it's my job to kind of bring you back down to earth and develop a realistic scenario for you.
Yeah, so it's almost like a reality check to understand where their spending is going, and also realistically where you call the investment horizon. It's almost like at what point in time can they actually meet their goals of retirement, and if it's not realistic, then readjusting their expectations.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. And so on the same topic of people, let's say, have little savings, especially I'm thinking about people who are much younger this time. So I'm thinking about people who are just graduated and saying to themselves, I just got my new job. I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a lot of savings. What can they do to start their accumulation phase?
Yeah, so I think there's general principles to follow, spend a third on living, spend a third on rent, and then put a third away, right? Those are pretty strong principles to follow, regardless of what income you're on. The reason I have a job is because we're not taught this in school.
Yeah.
We're all taught how to find the best career for us and find something you love and the money will follow. And it does typically, but no one ever comes in and says, well, when money follows, where do I put it?
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're young, you most likely don't have a huge capacity to save. But you need to understand that you are still far better off than someone who has a large capacity to save, who is close to retirement. The biggest asset on your side there is time. The effect of compound growth over time is massive. The general principle that, let's say you put 100 pounds in the market, it grows by 10% year one. And then let's say you don't put any more money into it. And then in year two, that 110 grows by 10% again. So the same return, but you're achieving 10% return now on 110 pounds starting value. The effects of that over time are huge.
Yeah.
So don't be put off by the fact, it's like, oh, well, I only have 50 pounds a month to save. I only have 100 pounds a month to save. Whatever broadly 25 to 30% of your net income is, just be diligent and, religiously put that away. And then I can talk about what to put that away into depending on what your goals are. But at least as a starting point, the biggest issue I find with clients who are older, regardless of income, is that they have absolutely zero idea what they're spending. The first things I do is, when I'm looking at a new client is, what are you spending?
Yeah.
Do a bit of an expenses question. And as I said, people always underestimate. They're ashamed to talk about it. But as you said, it's kind of a reality check. Let's rip the Band-Aid off now when you're 20, waiting until you're 65.
And let's also break down the stigma of not being able to speak about money, because that's so important. So the formula, I think, is key. So can you just repeat that for the listeners?
Yeah. So split it into thirds. So take whatever your paycheck is, they'll take the tax off your PAYE, and then whatever's hitting your bank account, use a third to live off of, which is, bills and discretionary spending, food, leisure, going out, a third on rent or mortgage, and then a third put it away. And following that principle will then guide you before you make big life decisions. Sometimes I find people who are spending 70% of their net income on rent. And then the result of that is that, well, they have to live on the other 30% and nothing goes to saving. Yeah. Or I meet people who spend 30% of what they make on rent and they spend all the rest. I know I'm bad. I spend it on, I know I shouldn't. well, then don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll just mention a quick thing on this. What's pretty cool is that over time, as long as you don't have, your tastes will change over time as you get older. You will want to do nicer things. You want to dine at nicer restaurants, fly business class, all these things as you get older. But if your income grows, I saw a statistic that after £50,000 a year, the marginal benefit of earning more money kind of really does decrease. Because it gives us enough to do what we want to do and have fun. Obviously, there are always outliers. But generally, there's a very minimal marginal benefit to earning more money. So let's say you start off doing that third principle in your 20s, and then you see a large jump in earnings in your 30s and 40s. Well, you can change that split, i.e., it doesn't have to be a third anymore. You could make it 15% of what you net now because you're on 300 grand a year or 200 grand a year. Put 15, use 15 to live on, use 15% on your rent or mortgage, and then put 70% away.
Oh.
Right? If you really want to fast track this, again, you can still stick to the third if you have expensive tastes and you want to. Obviously, it's a balance, right? You don't want to just be putting everything away, not enjoying your life. It's more about the journey than the destination, right? So there's no point kind of like, I see like someone holding their breath, saving money and not enjoying themselves.
Yeah.
Create a balance. So figure out your split, whether it's a third, 15%, 50%, 70%, what have you. Everyone has different attitudes towards spending and saving money.
Yeah.
But start with that baseline as one third, and it'll serve you well.
Great advice, Alexis. Thank you so much. And then for those that actually do have the savings, or let's say they've just come into money, what would you advise them? Is the first step to sit down with a financial advisor such as yourself or, someone else if they're, let's say, in a different jurisdiction? Is it best to do that?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things I bring to the table is I manage to get rid of the noise that is around there, because there are 1,000 different articles, 10,000 different videos, 100,000 different piece of advice on the internet as to this is what you should do, follow this trader, do that, put your money here, try crypto, do all this. It's like going to a supermarket and there are 50 different brands of strawberry marmalade. You're like, well, I just want strawberry marmalade. I don't know which one to pick. It's the illusion of choice.
Yeah.
So people get what is commonly referred to as investment paralysis. They don't know what to do unless they sit on cash. So it's very helpful to sit down with someone like myself because I can simplify this for you. There are very, very simple principles to follow, some of which we've already covered, that can allow you to just give you a bit more of a clear path. So if you've come into money or you have disposable income, first thing I say is don't invest all your cash. Keep 3 months of expenses, if you're more conservative, on hand for a rainy day fund, emergency fund. If you're older, typically hold more. If you're not retiring, maybe hold 12 months of expenses as cash. But anything above and beyond that, put it to work.
Okay.
And, you start by, I'll keep it very high level for now, but I try and illustrate the concept of building a house.
Okay.
So your cash is, your buffer. That is kind of your front door, your gate, keeps you safe.
Okay.
If you need anything.
Yeah. Then
you want to start building your house. So you start with your foundations. And we think about, everything I do is centered around tax efficiency. As I mentioned, we're not the kind of guys who are going to try and get you. I'm not going to call you up and say, oh, I got a really hot tip on a new stock. It's not what we do. Get diversified risk-adjusted growth over a long period of time. But we have a huge emphasis on tax-efficient planning solutions.
Yeah.
So that's what people discount all the time, is they say, they solely focus on what stock should I buy? What should I do now? What, why is that down? Why is that up? They completely discount the structure you're investing in, which to me is even more important. And so that's why I'm using this analogy. So we start with a gate, which is your cash, and then you go on to your foundations, which are your pension and your ISA in the UK, right? So the reason these are your foundations are because they're your most tax-efficient assets for longer-term growth. Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, a lot of people are unfamiliar with tax efficiency, and I think they maybe sometimes conflate it or get it confused with like tax evasion. So can you just explain a little bit for some people who maybe aren't familiar with tax efficient planning, what that means?
Sure. So tax evasion is illegal.
Yep.
Tax mitigation is being smart about it.
Okay.
Right? So, there are structures in place in the UK which allow you to offset a lot of tax or put you in a position in the future where you will be very, very tax efficient. The UK has one of the most aggressive tax systems in the world. It's very, very high for some people.
Okay.
And so it's right that there are ways for you to offset that. With your pensions, you get a lot of tax relief on the way in. Maybe we can save that for another episode in terms of the exact kind of how that works.
Yep.
The government tax relief that's awarded when you make contributions. But broadly, when you put money into a pension, the
Yep.
government will give you money back. So you already have a buffer there. If markets drop, well, you've already had an uplift from the government. So people really, really discount pensions. I hear it all the time. So I don't believe in pensions. They're locked away until I'm 65. It's not real money. Oh, I'll just buy property. Pensions are the most tax efficient solution available for you. If you are a UK taxpayer, earning, even over 50K, you're paying tax through the nose.
Yeah.
So why would you discount it? Isn't the price of locking it away worth the savings that you'll make over the period you're contributing?
And also you're investing in it, right? So you're using it and you're making it work for you.
You're not losing it.
Exactly.
So, but people have misunderstandings around protection. Well, if I die, I won't be able to access it. Untrue. I can only access it at 65. Untrue. You can access it at 57.
In the UK. In the UK.
Yeah. Yes, right. It's all UK centric.
Yeah. We do have listeners from all over the world, so I just want to make it very clear. It's important, obviously, also to get financial advice that is relevant to your jurisdiction. That's very important.
Absolutely.
So I think the idea of tax efficient planning, it's basically based on regulation from the government that has enabled various different mitigating factors, either now or in the future, for those investing in different instruments. Is that right?
Exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's really helpful. And I do like the analogy of the house. And that's really, really helpful.
Yeah, you start, because sometimes people say, well, what, can we just go for something a bit more aggressive? I wanted something that's, there's other, because there are structures out there that give you a lot of tax, in the UK again, they give you a lot of tax relief, but they are quite risky.
Yeah.
And I say, well, that's kind of level 3 or 4 of your house. If you go straight to the top and you don't build a strong foundation, then a gust of wind will knock your house down.
Yeah.
So make sure you start with the basics, maximize those to your benefits. Whatever jurisdiction you reside in, there are always the equivalent, in Canada, the tax-free savings account, what an ISA is, you have all these different structures available to you.
Yeah.
That can really help. So it's an element of starting with those and then building up from the bottom.
And how would one be able to, like, for example, if you're in Canada and they don't have access to you, how would they go about, is it a financial advisor they should be speaking to? Is it an accountant? Who should they be speaking to get this advice about tax mitigation?
Yeah, so I often get confused with an accountant. I meet with people and they say, oh, but I have an accountant. He does all my taxes. I'm not an accountant. Accountants are reactive to tax planning. They will say, this is what you did, and this is what your tax bill is, or this is what you should do in the short term, through your company or personally to save, allowances or what have you. We're more longer term proactive tax planners.
Okay.
And we do it through instruments that are available to you, right? So if you have issues with or concerns about you're running a business and you don't know what allowances or what filings or things like that, or how to register it, that's an accountant's bread and butter. Speak to your accountant. If you need help filing a tax return, speak to an accountant. But if you want to have a conversation around, I have this cash in the bank, I don't know what to do with it, it's sat there, I don't have any immediate need for it, I feel like I should be doing something with it, speak to a financial advisor. And sometimes people say, oh, well, do the fees justify the advice? Yes, because the first thing it starts with is incentivizing people to save.
Yes.
My view is that if you hadn't have spoken with me, I hear a lot of people say, okay, well, I'll just do it myself. Okay, good luck. Because it's that failure to follow up that results in people not achieving their goals.
Yeah.
If we hadn't have had this chat, would you really have gone through your expenses with a fine-tooth comb? Yeah. Ascertained that actually I could probably save another £300 a month and put that away into a tax-efficient solution? I don't think you would have. That's just my... If you want to look online, there are... I think Vanguard did a report on the value that they call it advisors alpha, the value that advisors bring to the table. And the biggest component to that, which they say adds around 2 to 3% of returns per year over the longer run, behavioral coaching is one of the first things I mentioned on the podcast, which is without a professional to guide you during times of uncertainty, which is when you need it the most, you will make erratic decisions. Especially when you get, okay, but if you're investing a couple £100 or a couple thousand, that's more thing, but what I've seen is when you start to get to 80,000, 100,000, 200,000, you get a kind of a wake up call. You're like, oh, this is real money. This is my money. And what happens there? You get erratic, you get emotional, you make short-term knee-jerk reactions, make these decisions. You sell when markets go down. You start to not follow the path that you set out on.
So you're essentially it's like a counselor that people can come to. And hopefully, even if they're feeling emotional or stressed, you can help guide them and keep them on the right path.
Yeah. There's an element of kind of, sometimes I feel a little bit like a therapist. It's a bit like,
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I know that with some people, like I've spoken to about their finances, sometimes they're a bit worried that it's not a good match for their financial planning. And I wondered whether you would agree with my statement or my thoughts, which are a financial advisor is almost like finding a good therapist or finding a good husband, maybe, or partner. It's like you need to be able to actually align with your values and the way like bedside manner and so on. And so would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something you're going to be working with for a long time. The average client stays with our firm for 14 years.
Right.
You want to make sure you get along with the person you're working with for 14 years.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, we have a couple of questions from some listeners, and I'll just run through these. And if you could give some high level advice, that would be super helpful. We might have already touched on some of this, but anyway, let's just dive into those. So we have a listener who's single and has no dependents, who's in their 20s, no major mortgage payments because they live at home, but they're working, and so they have disposable income. They're thinking about investing large sums in crypto and alternative assets rather than long-term investments. Any advice?
Well, firstly, I'd ask them where they got that idea from. Most likely they got crypto from the buzz.
Yeah, YouTube.
And that's interesting about alternatives. It depends on what kind of alternatives they're looking at. But if you're in your early 20s, again, start with the basics and look at the past. Look at what's happened in the past. Have alternative assets historically beat equity portfolios or indexes over time? No. What's your goal? You'll be living at home now. You move out, you're going to buy your own place, you're going to rent? Because, the minimum time horizon for these things from our perspective is 3 years. 3 to 5 years is really the minimum time you want to be leaving these things in the market, because markets move quite erratically. So the reason I say that is if this young person is living at home now, loads of money into crypto, but I got to buy a house in 2 years. Try and find a high interest yielding cash account and leave that there until you buy a house. Because what happens, that crypto could go up. You can get 10x on it, or it could go to nothing. I've seen both sides of the coin. I've seen some clients come to me and said, I put 10 grand in this thing and it's worth 600K.
Wow, that'd be nice.
Yeah, good for you. You got really lucky.
Yeah.
I've seen other people who put 50K in and lost all of it.
Yeah.
So it goes back to one of the principles I mentioned earlier is ask yourself, do you need to take that risk? Why would you put, and you specifically mentioned, Nicole, a large sum of money into, and alternatives in crypto are very different. It's interesting that I don't know what split, what the reasons are, but again, just look at the principles of longer term investing. Start with what your goals are. Shorter term, purchase a house. If that's not on the cards, fine. You don't have any, do you want to, you're going to get married? Do you have a partner? Are you sharing bills? Are you the sole breadwinner? Have kids? Kind of things to think about. What does retirement look like for you? Try and flesh it out. The best way to think about that is, what are you spending now? You want to maintain your standard of living in retirement? Probably increase it if you're in your early 20s. What does that look like? And then map it out.
I love that. Yeah.
Do I need to put all that risk in one, all my eggs in one basket in that sense? I don't think so. So just go back to the general principles we talked about.
Thank you, Alexis. A final listener question. This listener is in their 30s, has 2 young children, a partner, a mortgage, car payments, and they want to know how to deal with consistently putting savings towards the long-term retirement, either pensions, mutual funds, etc., versus enjoying life, taking holidays, splurging on nice things, while they're still young and able to enjoy their life. Any advice?
That's a great one, because basically it's like, okay, I want to enjoy my life. and I know I should be saving, and even if they are saving, is that enough?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the balance to strike? Well, that's why I start with these financial planning reports. Show them, well, let's take a look at what you're spending now.
Mm-hmm.
And let's take a look at what you're saving.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, work backwards. What does retirement mean to you? What does enough mean?
Yeah.
And then, bring it back, project it outwards, and say, okay, well, actually, putting 500 a month away when I'm spending $3,000, if I want to spend X amount of retirement, that's nowhere near enough. Or actually, no, I'm pretty much on track.
Mm-hmm.
Before thinking about, should I put it in alternatives, in crypto, in stocks, in bonds, in property? Start with a figure that you need to put away.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we can work on, well, what's the best course of action for you? To that listener, I'd say, okay, well, I mentioned the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 rule. How much planning have you done to date? How much do you have in cash? It's difficult to say just not knowing much about you, but take a look at what you have in stock.
Yeah.
What does your partner have? How much is it costing you? How old are they? Are they going to private school? Are you planning for university? Are you going to give them a nest egg to start their down payment, their first property, get them on the property ladder? And then, think to yourself, am I really, truly putting away 1/3 of my net disposable income?
Yeah.
But it starts with having a plan.
I love that. I think that's great. And I think all those questions that you asked, I think people should always be thinking about those because, as you said before, it can change. It can change in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, and it can just be so dynamic. Thank you so much, Alexis.
No worries.
Well, now we are moving on to the final segment, which is the Envisionaire questionnaire. And this is a fun feature of the Envisionaire podcast. We ask questions to our guests reflecting on their past, present, and future. So, Alexis, looking towards your past, if you could give your 15-year-old self any advice, what would it be?
Save more.
Okay. How would you do that as a 15-year-old, your 15-year-old self?
Well, again, as I said, we talked about the, people in their early 20s, and I was 15. I had a part-time job. I got an allowance.
Yeah.
Put away. There was no tax to pay, so you're already ahead.
Okay. Wait, would you have put away the whole thing, or would you actually just put away like your formula 1/3?
No, I'm not. I got to enjoy it a little bit, so I'd I would have put a third away, but I wouldn't have spent everything. And
yeah.
For the next paycheck or handout from mom and dad to come around. No, I would have tried to, I'd have started a tax-free savings account of some sort and said, right, let's just set up a direct debit, deposit that stuff in the bank every week or every month or whatever I got paid or what have you, and forget about it. That's the advice I would have given.
Yeah. Mini Alexis, young mini Alexis. Okay, reflecting on the present, if you could seek any advice from anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
Okay, so this is a bit of a personal one. I would seek advice from the late, great jazz pianist, Oscar Peterson. It has nothing to do with financial planning.
Good. I like that. We want to hear, more about Alexis.
Yeah, this is my hobby / passion. I played piano since I was 5 years old.
Yes.
And, I did all my classical training, and then I discovered jazz in my later years of doing my classical studies, and I went on to that. But I never really got a formal training in jazz. I kind of taught myself how to do it.
Really?
And I remember when I was at McGill, I had a bit of a trio. I formed what I thought was a bit of a trio with a few of the guys in the music school.
Oh, really?
They listened to me play, and they said, "Yeah, it's really interesting the way you play, but never go to school, never go to jazz school, because they're going to try and unteach you all of that and teach you the right way to play." I was like, "Oh, that's interesting."
Wow.
So I don't know what the right way to play is. Anyways, Oscar Peterson is definitely one of my idols. He was an unbelievable talent. And if I could have had an hour of his time to pick his brain as to how to improve my ear, my musicality, my playing ability, my dexterity, my technique, I would have been eternally grateful. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen, but I still listen to his records every day.
Oh, amazing. I love that. That's really cool. Okay, future looking. What's one goal you would like to achieve in the next 5 years?
In the next 5 years, I would like to purchase a property. That's something that's been on the cards for about a year and a half.
Yes. Yeah.
I've delayed it a little bit because of the mortgage crisis that we're in now, and interest rates are very, very high.
Yeah, yeah.
Wherever your listeners are, I think they're feeling the bite of that. So that's something that I'd like to do. Now, initially, when I started thinking about buying a house, I wanted to purchase a big house, and have something, really fancy and expensive, something that I stay in for a long time. And as I've gotten a bit older, and dare I say wiser, I've thought, well, maybe it makes sense to buy something more modest because,
yeah,
I have this conversation a lot around property in the UK. I'm originally from the US, but the culture in the UK is any excess capital you put into property. I want to buy land and property and generate income. It's just it's the US. But in the US, it's you put all your money into the stock market. It's just kind of a cultural difference. And I have a lot of people say, well, this all looks great, Alexis, your house analogy and what have you. But that's just made me think about buying more property. And do I need a pension? I'll just buy more property and generate income from that. It's like, well, you want to look at the opportunity cost of doing that. Firstly, property is not very tax efficient. I'll save that for another episode. But
yes, you and I have talked about that a lot.
Yeah, we have actually. Yeah. You want to look at the opportunity cost of putting your money into property because you may get yield, which is then taxed at a high rate of income. If you rent it out, you hopefully benefit from the capital appreciation of the property itself, but you're foregoing the opportunity to put any excess capital into tax efficient planning solutions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, my initial goal to buy something for, 1.5 mil and put 20% down, 300 grand. I've come to realize that it would be more prudent from a tax efficiency and just longer term planning viewpoint to purchase something for maybe 600, 500, 600, put down 20% of that, 120, and then use the 180 extra to plan for the longer term. So I've diversified my assets as well. So that's my old goal in the next 5 years. Hopefully do it a bit sooner than that.
Oh, I love it. No, I think this is great. And I'm looking forward to you hosting me for dinner.
Yeah, I owe you a Trinidadian curry.
Yes. Yes. Tell the listeners.
Oh, yeah. It's an unbelievable cook, Nicole.
Thank you.
She very kindly invited me. You very kindly invited me to your house. I think it was relatively early on in our professional relationship, actually.
I know. No, but we just adore you. That's why. So you got the invite over. I'm really looking forward to that. And I know you're going to achieve that. So that's really exciting. Well, thank you, Alexis, for being part of the Envisionaire podcast. We really appreciate hearing all of the advice that you gave us for planning a strong financial future. And for anyone who wants to contact Alexis, you can find him on LinkedIn. I'll put the link in the show notes. And it's Alexis Liatis, Liatis, and he's a partner at Morrinson Wealth. Morrinson Wealth is Morrinson and then Wealth. And I'm sure you can also go to the website, www.morrinsonwealth.co.uk, and you can find Alexis that way. Thank you so much, Alexis. Really appreciate it, and can't wait to have you on again. Talk even more so about all these bits. I'm sure we'll get some more follow-up questions as well.
Yeah, we just scratched the surface today, so good intro, and thank you so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Envisionaire podcast. You are now officially an Envisionaire, so welcome to the club. Make sure that you like and subscribe to this podcast so that you stay up to date on all of our new episodes. And remember, every day offers us a new opportunity to start envisioning and living our best lives.